Hello, everybody. Today, our guest is Joe Kennedy from Unit London. It's a very, very exciting young gallery, and we have lots of questions to ask him. Actually, I'm very happy, Joe, to have you here with us. And also, I will tell you that your gallery also is part of a term project.
It's part of what project?
A term project. My students will prepare a project about your gallery.
Oh wow! Okay.
Hi, I am one of the persons.
Okay, Özge, you will ask your questions. Everything is set. So let's start and proceed with my questions. Okay. Could you please tell us, Joe, about Unit London and its story and how you choose to become a gallerist and all this? Everything is started in 2013, right?
Start from the top. Yeah. So Unit London is a gallery that I started with one of my very good friends from school 7 years ago now. In September 2013, we were 22 years old. And around that time, like social media was obviously kind of taking a grip on culture and society, and the world was changing, at a faster pace than it ever was changing before. And we were both artists at the time, practicing and taking our work to galleries, and often finding that the experience that we had when we were going to the galleries wasn't what we wanted. We felt like there was a coldness to a lot of the gallery experiences that we were having, and we didn't feel like we were welcome in lots of those galleries because we weren't necessarily from the industry. And so we kind of we had this idea of doing things in a slightly different way. We found that there were values that were lacking in the gallery experience, and we found that there were artists that we believed in, that we were inspired by, who were influencing our own work at the time, who didn't necessarily have the opportunity to show in a big gallery or get lots of exposure because they didn't have the right commercial angle, or they didn't know the right people, or they didn't go to the correct art college, or they might have been self-taught. And so the industry has kind of created this selection pool of talent, which is very much restricted to this institutionalized base of people who can afford to go to art college, or who have parents in the industry, or who have other means outside of just the quality or the originality of their work to get a foothold. So we thought we could experiment and try something and create our own space where we would show the artists that we believed in, regardless of where they went to school, or how commercially viable their work was, or what race they were, or what age they were, or where they came from. And we wanted to just kind of focus on talent, and the originality of the message. We wanted to find artists who had their own voice, who had their own language, and back them and believe in them. And we wanted Unit London to be a space that could, really provide a platform for those artists to be seen and to be heard, to give them a voice. And we were doing pop-up exhibitions for the first 5 years. And it would be myself and my business partner, and we would be open until 3 o'clock in the morning most of the time. And I would be working a 9-to-5 job during the day, and then coming to the gallery between the hours of 6 p.m. and 2 a.m., standing in the doorway, trying to grab people in off the street and tell them about the brand and the gallery and the artists, and try and sell whatever we could to try and keep the lights on. And
one question, Joe. When you started, or before starting, you were buying already some artworks? Or you
No. So I was working a job in advertising, which was like a relatively low-level job in advertising, doing advertising branding and strategy, and that was where I was earning like a very meager salary. But that salary, I put everything into the funding of that first space, you know, which was only a pop-up, and, you know, it wasn't expensive. It was in the suburbs of London. It was completely detached from the London art scene. And it was basically next to a butcher's shop, and it was an old charity shop, which was tiny, you know, it was absolutely tiny. And we were reaching out to artists, basically saying, look, we love your work. We're starting a gallery. I know you don't know who we are and we have no credentials, but would you want to get involved? Like, do you want to give us a piece? And most of the artists were like, I won't swear, but most of the artists basically told us where to stick it, because we didn't have any credentials, you know, and we were asking them to consign us works for an exhibition when they didn't know that we could sell the work.
Where does this courage come from?
I mean, I think we're both very ambitious people. Myself and my co-founder, we're both very ambitious. And also, I think, you know, when you're that age, I would say there's also a certain naivety to what we were doing. You know, we believed that we could take on the art industry. We believed that it was going to be something much bigger than what it was. You know, our friends and family were supportive, but at the same time, they were kind of like, what do you mean you're starting an art gallery? You know, and, you know, I think a lot of people around us believed that it was just going to be a 1 month pop-up show, but in our minds, it was going to be, you know, a major gallery one day. And we've always had that belief. And I think that belief is you need to have belief in whatever you're doing. You know, if you're going to make something a success, you have to believe in it first and foremost. And we have always kind of had that vested belief that if we worked hard enough, we believed that the artists that we were working with were strong enough and deserved the platform and the voice to be heard. And I think the first marker of success, the first time we thought that we were doing something right was when we hit 100 followers on Facebook. That was when we thought, okay, this is going to be something now, because we have this great reaction, even though those 100 followers were pretty much our friends and family. But it gave us this inkling that what we were doing wasn't a crazy idea. And, you know, people were really responding to the brand and the values of championing talent, of representing artists, giving artists a voice, regardless of where they came from, regardless of who they were, regardless of their background. And also just being open and accessible. You know, we wanted our work and our gallery to be seen by as many people as possible, not just the select few, not just the people who are in the know or who have grown up in the industry. We wanted to give our artists the biggest platform that they could possibly get. And so I think that kind of ethos really resonated with people at that point in time. And when we got kicked out of that first space, after 2-3 months, we then decided that I would quit my job and that we would really go all in and make something of it. And we then moved to Covent Garden, and we had another pop-up space there. And, you know, this is, I don't know what the kind of makeup of your class is exactly and what people's interests are, but I think if you are interested in starting a gallery or any business for that matter, and you don't have the money to take a space, you can be really clever and creative by approaching landlords who have empty shops or have empty spaces across London, and who are probably paying business rates on those spaces, or, you know, they have costs associated with keeping those spaces empty. If you can go in and not pay any rent, but say, I'm going to take care of the space for you, I'll look after it, I'll pay you your business rates, you know, I'll pay you a small amount just to use the space for a small amount of time. That's a huge opportunity. And there's so many spaces across London and big cities across the world where you don't need to sign a commercial lease for 15 years and break your bank. You can go in and do it on the cheap, as long as you're creative and maybe courageous enough to have those conversations and convince landlords that you're worth taking a punt on. But I think, kind of taking a space like we did in that first shop, and then moving on to 6 or 7 different pop-ups that we had over the next few years, opening up, getting kicked out, opening up again, getting kicked out. It was a long process of 5-6 years of just hopping around London. Wherever we could get a free space, we would move in and set up a show. And that's how we arrived ultimately at where we are now. you know, having those spaces, having that presence, having those physical relationships with people, alongside growing our social media following and our online content, allowed us to kind of build the Unit London brand to an extent, and it allowed us to meet with collectors and meet with different artists and just generally engage with the community. And yeah, and that's kind of allowed us to we now have a permanent space in Mayfair, which is, I can maybe even show you around a little bit if you like. I can walk around the space and show you.
It will be great. Now, I'm curious, what is your background and what is the background of your partner? Are you management graduates? Because the students, my students are business and economics students, but there are some art management students. Maybe also there are some artists who will be listening to these videos, because I'm going to upload the video on the YouTube channel as well. So tell us a bit about your background. What did you study? Do you have an artistry background to start up this business?
No, we didn't. I actually studied psychology, and my partner studied English and theatre. So we don't have, and I think this is what kind of differentiates us from the path that many people take when they approach the industry, which is having experience in art history, or having experience in art management, or having experience working at an auction house or a gallery. Because as soon as you do that, you become conditioned in a certain way. You become, I don't want to say institutionalized, because that sounds very dramatic, but you start to learn the formula of the industry. And therefore, when you go and start your own business, in one sense, you have an advantage because you understand how the mechanics of the industry work. And that is an advantage, but at the same time, you're also conditioned to play along to that tune and to subscribe to that formula. So I think once you have that knowledge or that education, you can, it can be a trap as well. You know, it can be a trap that you fall into. And it's very hard to compete with the system when you're playing in the system and you're playing the same game as the big boys. It's hard to compete. So the advantage that we had was that we came from outside the industry, and for us, it's a passion. Like, art is a passion. You know, we were practicing artists ourselves. So we understood the frustrations of the artists, because we were artists ourselves, taking our work to galleries and not getting, you know, running into walls the whole time. And so we understood those frustrations. And then we also understood the frustrations of, you know, everyday visitors going to galleries and not being treated with basic respect sometimes, or dignity, because you're not a buyer.
Snobbish behavior.
Snobbish behavior.
Why is it so? What do you think about that?
The snobbish behavior comes from, it's very much, it's not just because they don't like you. It's very much it's a symptom of the mechanics of the industry, which are, what's interesting about, you know, my background in psychology, and I then went into advertising. It set me up really well to start an art business, because really, when you talk about art, whether it's contemporary or modern or before that, you are talking about stories. You know, artists tell stories, and art advisors and art dealers and galleries tell stories on behalf of their artists. And a story builds value into an artist's work, because, you know, if you look at a painting, there's paintings behind me, but, you know, if you look at a painting and its material, objective, physical value, you're talking about a canvas and materials and an artist's time. And, you know, that's not a huge expense. But then when it sells, either at primary or secondary level, for $100,000, that's like a 100,000%, or, you know, like a 10,000% markup on the price. And that difference in value between £100 for materials versus $100,000 for a sale is all generated by storytelling, ultimately. So really, art, the game of art is storytelling and marketing. And what these galleries do at the highest level is they use language, they design the gallery in a certain way, they speak to you in a certain way, they behave in a certain way, which preserves the ideals of value. You know, they are preserving value in the works that they show by positioning them in a context which feels very elite and very grand. So when you walk into a huge space and you see one work on the wall, that's done for a specific reason. That's done so that you are not familiar with it, and that justifies a higher price, and that justifies a certain experience that they're giving you. So the snobbishness is a symptom of the value systems that the art world uses to keep their works at a high price point. You know, and the snobbishness comes with money. It comes with a certain status. And, you know, the fact is that art should not be something that is reserved for just those people. And it shouldn't be presented in a way that looks after commercial interests above the interests of the artist and the message and the work. You know, it's a very, very authentic form of expression, emotional and intellectual expression, which should be accessible to everybody, you know. But as soon as it's positioned in a very, very cold, clinical, intense exhibition space in, you know, a rich suburb like Mayfair, and when there's people in the gallery who don't want to speak to you or who are judging you as soon as you walk in, that form of expression gets lost a little bit. You know, and because as a viewer and as a visitor to the gallery, you're having to deal with this weird social pressure of like, am I being watched? Am I being judged? Like, am I not wearing the right thing? Am I going to say something stupid? And, you know, if you go to an artist studio, if you have that pleasure of going to the studio of an artist and meeting them in their space and seeing the works before they're exhibited, it's like the most incredible atmosphere. And it's so different. It's the polar opposite to what you see in a gallery space. Because the artist they'll give you a cup of tea, you'll have a joke, you'll be speaking about the works, they'll be handling the works like completely the opposite way they are handled in a gallery. There's no white gloves, there's no little kids, you know, students who are employed to handle the works in a certain way. It's just real and it's authentic, and that's really what art is about. And I think more and more culture is being geared towards authenticity, because we all have access to so much information now on social media and the internet. We're exposed to so many different ideologies and different lines of thinking. And that's allowed us to seek out authenticity and seek out the truth and seek out what's real and reject what's manufactured or commercial. And so I think more and more, you know, people want that authentic experience. They want to be able to view art in a way that's not contrived. They want to view it in a way where they can have a conversation about a work in a gallery space with their friend or with somebody else, where they don't feel like they're being judged, where they feel like they can have a private moment, where they can feel like they can really engage with the work and let it speak to them. So that's always something that we've tried to kind of foster at the gallery is that more authentic experience, and I guess more akin to the experience of being in an artist studio, you know, just a bit more relaxed and a bit more informal.